So in this video we're going to be solving equations of this style. So let's crack on with number 1. We have x over 2 is equal to 3. So remember, a fraction is a division. This is saying x divided by 2 is equal to 3. So because we're dividing x by 2, in order to isolate the x, we need to do the opposite and multiply both sides by 2. So if we multiply the left-hand side by 2, we just get left with x. On the right-hand side, if we multiply 3 by 2, we get 6. And this makes sense that 6 divided by 2 is 3. So that works out. Now number 2, x divided by 3 is equal to 5. So the opposite operation of dividing by 3 is multiplying by 3. So if I multiply this by 3, I get x. And if I multiply this by 3, I get 15. Now for number 3, we've got the x on the other side of the equation, but don't worry, that's fine. Okay, we'll do exactly the same process. We're dividing x by 5, so we're going to multiply both sides by 5. 10 times 5 is 50, and we multiply this by 5 and we get x. And I prefer to have x equals, so we'll write that as x equals 50. Okay, now 4, 5 and 6. What you might be thinking is that this looks very similar to the examples that we had in the previous video, where I would have something like, let's say I'd have 2x is equal to 8. And here I'm multiplying the x by 2, so to invert that I would divide both sides by 2. So dividing the left-hand side by 2, I get x. Dividing the right-hand side by 2, I get 4. Okay? So format-wise, it looks like that. So if I was to have 1/2 x here is equal to 3, then in order to get rid of the multiplying by 1/2, I would divide both sides by 1/2. So if I divide 3 by 1/2, okay, you get this horrible looking thing. Or you could write it as 3 divided by 1/2, like that. Now you may remember back to the number work, if you divide by a fraction, that's the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So 3 times 2 is 6, divided by 1 is 6. And so the answer is 6. So if 1/2 x equals 3 and the solution is 6, well, that looks very similar to this line here. So in actual fact, writing 1/2 x is precisely the same as writing x over 2. Now the reason for that, you might be going, well, why would that be the case? There are two notations here that are equivalent. So x over 2, you could write as the multiplication of two fractions. Because x times 1 is x, 1 times 2 is 2. So this is the same as having x, which is x over 1, times 1/2, which is the same as 1/2 x. So what that means is that these two problems are equivalent. So rather than thinking about dividing both sides by 1/2, what you should do instead, or you could do instead, I shouldn't say should, what you could do instead is think about it as multiplying both sides by 2. Okay? Get rid of the 1/2 by multiplying both sides by 2. So if I multiply this side by 2, I get x. If I multiply this side by 2, I get 6. And of course, number 5 is identical to number 2. 1/3 x is the same as x over 3. So you multiply both sides by 3, and I will get x is equal to 15. And number 6 is identical to number 3. 1/5 x is the same as x over 5. So I multiply both sides by 5, and I get 50 is equal to x, which of course is x is equal to 50.